Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about Big Swiss by beagin. I got this recommended by a friend without being told anything, and just from the cover, I thought it would be a story where the main character are dogs. You know, like the Lady and the Tramp or something, but without the spaghetti. So it took me a few pages to realize that while there are dogs in the story is about the owner of this dog, a human being, not about the dogs. The book opened with introducing us to the main character Greta. Greta is a fan of Big Swiss, or more accurately, the lady she nicknamed as Big Swiss because she came from Switzerland and said she had a big aura. Or at least that's what Greta heard from a recording. Greta Work, which is her first and last name, is a transcriber for a relationship coach who named himself Om. A fake name, obviously. His actual name is Bruce, and that's how she heard her recording. She's one of Om's clients, and Greta is currently typing whatever she's saying on the tape to Om. And before she worked for Om, she worked at a farm tech to count pills and put them in a bottle. She worked with a pharmacist named Hopper, a 52 years old young man who is always on every regular poison you can think of. Caffeine, nicotine, THC, and of course alcohol to cope with his life. They had some regular patients that came in asking for drugs that usually they need to get rid of quite easily, but one day some dude came in with a fake receipt that didn't work. So he pulled out a real gun which works better I guess. And a few days later, the guy appeared in the news, having overdosed himself after getting his test. A few days later, Hopper chose to join the overdose guy. Greta's boyfriend at that time kept worrying about Greta not having any reaction to Hopper's death, ED or emotional detachment, and pushed her to meet a psychologist who eventually suggested to her to try to stop caffeine and nicotine. A suggestion that didn't take very well, so instead of quitting drinking coffee and smoking, she left everything and everyone and moved to a different country because she's healthy like that. Once she went there, using her experience transcribing audio for high-tech companies and researchers, she put out job application to a few shrinks in town, and that's how she met Om. Definitely one of the most irresponsible psychiatrists in fiction history. This is a dark comedy if you haven't gotten it so far. And so far the characters is as absurd as possible, which is how dark comedy operates. The new place that Greta lived even had a fallen noble type of person, Sabine, an anorexic who used to be raised by old money, who now only lives through new gossip. And the mansion they live had a massive bee nest that is now encased in glass so they can look at the bees, which of course don't work that well, and a lot of bees just goes outside anyway, usually found dead in the floor somewhere being sniffed by Greta's dog Pignon. Greta is getting more and more attached to Big Swiss because she listened to every private and confidential therapy session that Big Swiss had with Om, and she found that Big Swiss is different than the rest of the patient, at least on her own very flawed judgment. Big Swiss feel more real to her, which I will get into later. While the characters have some quirks, but these are not just characters that are quirky for the sake of being quirky, most of them have enough purpose and motivation to be like that. Even Bruce, the therapist known as Om, chose the name then become a sex therapist. She did it all because it works in Hudson, the city that the story took place in, where everything is at least a bit on the nose. These are quite well written characters for the most part. Sometimes the book does go on for too long in a scene, or there are a few scenes that just felt unnecessary, but even in those there are some really funny lines. It's gong honey, not dong, which actually made me chuckle. But it's definitely not a good thing when it has only been 30 to 40 pages and already the book feels like some scenes are unnecessary. Some scenes there are too much detail, which in a dark comedy it can feel like the author is trying to over-explain their joke. As an example of this, the story then goes back to Greta's ex Stacy, a guy she met when she was working in a restaurant who had some kind of accent. They quickly become a couple, then got into an engagement that lasted for a decade. In what is technically a flashback, she adds more detail to her backstory with her mother using a gun for herself, and the farewell letter Greta got that includes piece of her mother, things that we already know about because it has been mentioned just a few pages ago. And during this very long talk with Stacy, they also go through her childhood after that. Her aunts that she lived with, her school life, the bad habits she took. It's a very exposition heavy conversation which she finished with the decades she spent with Stacy until they got Pinon. When he finally pushed her for marriage, she ran away from him because he's so loving and caring that there's really nothing to do for her in life, and that scared her somehow. So she ran away with Pinon to Hudson. And with that, finally the flashback ended and we go back to the present. We know that from listening to all this private and sensitive information that Greta has developed some weird parasocial relationship with a lot of Om's patients. A very unique kind of parasocial where the premise of it feels illegal, and since Hudson is a small city, she sometimes meet them in public and recognize their voices. It felt weird because for these people, Grace is a stranger, but for Grace, she knows the most intimate detail that they have shared, thinking that they share them in private. And the worst of it is with Big Swiss, especially after she transcribed another of Big Swiss session with Om, where she finally described her being brutally assaulted by a stalker, and how to make her face got this figure. This makes Big Swiss feels more real to Greta and where her curiosity began. The current culture of internet celebrity means that a lot of people have done what Grace done parasocially, at least a little bit. But since Grace needs to keep the truth hidden, the closer she got to these people in public, the more she feels like she should avoid them. So it's different enough compared to the parasocial life of celebrity worship, where their fans sometimes will try their best to interact with a stranger whose content they really like. But that's only until Greta went to a dog park one day and met Big Swiss there. They introduced themselves to each other, and for some reason, Greta decided to lie not just about how she knew Big Swiss or Flavia, who is from Switzerland, but also basic things like her name. Greta introduced herself as Rebecca, with a K and an H instead of a standard double C, just to make it more confusing. They then go into some romance with had some moments that are very cliche, like Greta being able to open herself to Big Swiss more than anyone else, maybe because she used a fake name. Maybe it's because Greta felt guilty that she knew so much about Big Swiss without her knowledge. Maybe because Greta knew deep down that nothing will ever happen because she had listened to very private conversation without her permission during her transcription work. It's one of those scenarios that give the character an opportunity to be more of herself while they're faking everything else. But while it felt a little cliche, these moments are supported so much by the character dialogue that flows naturally, like they're having genuine, actual conversation with each other. They interrupt one another, there are some awkward pauses. None of them felt like an exchange of monologues because they have these long-ass monologues that badly written conversation usually have. And the more Greta hang out with Big Swiss, the more she tells her more intimate detail of her life, details that not even Stacy that she's been engaged with for a decade know about. And despite the car crash scenario that the characters are driving to that becomes the signature of dark comedy, Greta and Big Swiss have chemistry that is really on point. They genuinely felt like two friends that had been with each other for the longest time. But remember that the situation they met is still a car crash waiting to happen. And if that's not enough, Big Swiss, who is already married, is basically having an affair with Rebecca/Greta. And the more the affair goes on, the more they go at each other like they wanted everyone to know that they're having an affair, like they wanted to get found out and called out. Then Kit, the guy that assaulted Big Swiss in the past, also comes out of prison, and coincidentally, there's someone who has been stalking her ever since the day the police alert her that he's gone out of prison. And everyone, including Sabine, the woman Greta stayed at, also seems to be hiding something, and everyone is heading to an ending where each of these problems will crash into each other at the climax of the story. This doesn't have the cleanest writing. There are a few sections that went on for too long, there are a few cliches here and there, but for the most part it's such an enjoyable read. The author put a lot of very well placed setup for plots and conclude them in such a satisfying way. So watch all the car crash as they are intended to and the dust finally settled. Maybe there's something to learn from having survived such an experience if you give it a chance. I give this a 4. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.